What's up, y'all? Welcome back to the next video in the Dungeon Master experience. This is where we're going over the column written by Chris Perkins in the year 2011. So let's go ahead and see what kind of Dungeon Master wisdom we can get off of this guy 12 years after he wrote these, I'm sure, fine words. So the article we're going over today is called Previously in Iomandra. It's from February 24th, 2011. Wednesday night, it's 6:15 p.m. The players are gathering around the table, having just returned from picking up dinner. As is customary within the group, one of the players has bought my dinner and delivers it with an expression that I take to mean, "Here's your dinner, Mr. DM, sir. Please be kind tonight." I smile, say thank you, and begin casting a ritual that has served me well for many years, and which I will now share with you. This ritual is neither arcane nor divine. In fact, it's something I learned from watching episodic television. Many of the things that define my DMing style come from watching lots of serialized TV. Shows such as Lost and Battlestar Galactica immediately spring to my mind, and you'll see me referring to them from time to time in this column. The ritual in question is called Campaign Recap, and it always begins with the same three words: Previously in Iomandra. Yeah, that's pretty cool. So actually how I start my games is I do character moments. So I go around the table and everybody gets to say a minor thing about their character or a major thing about their character, just to kind of remind everybody of the character they're playing. So, you know, it can be as innocuous as my character likes fried fish, or, you know, my character was kidnapped as a child and, you know, tragic backstory stuff. That's what I do. Well, let's see what Chris Perkins does. Should I leave in the lightning bolt? I think I will. You've seen this before, previously on Lost, previously on Battlestar Galactica, and any television show that carries the baggage of a complex mythology and features an ensemble cast needs this ritual to remind the audience how far their story has come. In this instance, the audience is my gaming group, and as much as I like to think that everyone in my game sessions is unforgettable, that simply isn't true. The campaign recap ritual begins thus. At the top of a sheet of lined paper, I write today's date and the name of tonight's adventure, which I oftentimes refer to as an episode, followed by a short list of bullet points. Each bullet point recounts, in the past tense, something that occurred in a previous session, not necessarily the last session, that might be significant to tonight's game. The bullet points are carefully thought out, and I try to limit them to a handful. Sometimes in my haste to jot down these notes, I get the order mixed up, so after writing down the bullet points, I number them in the order in which I intend to recount them. At this moment, the player characters are in the middle of an adventure called Death Incarnate, having found themselves in the city of Tor, searching for the lair of a Dracolich named Ikristus. Ikristus used to be the dragon overlord of the massive island upon which Tor is built. In the backstory of the campaign, Ikristus was slain by a steel dragon named Crethmidion and his brood. But enough history, let's get back to the ritual at hand. At the end of last week's session, the heroes fought their way into the Dracolich's lair. The session ended with Ikristus rising from a pool of lightning-charged water to confront the interlopers. As the players devour their dinners and begin speculating on the outcome of tonight's session, here's what I write down. Death Incarnate, January 19th, 2011. Previously in Iomandra. Alagon had the names of 5 blasphemous undead creatures burned into the fingers of his trigger hand by an emissary of the Raven Queen. In order to fulfill his epic destiny and take his place by the Raven Queen's side, Alagon must track down and eliminate all 5 targets, one of which is a Dracolich named Ikristus. The heroes learn that Ikristus was brought back from the dead years ago by an arcane sect called the Kalak-Shun, outcast dragonborn wizards who practice necromancy. They also discovered that Ikristus control and command the otherwise benign ghosts that haunt the streets of Tor, effectively using them as spies. The heroes confronted a high-ranking member of the Kalak-Shun in his tower. After slaying the necromancer and interrogating his apprentice, the heroes activated a magical portal called the Throat of Tharzul, which led to Ikristus's secret readout below the city. The heroes arrived at a subterranean elemental node serving as Ikristus's lair, only to discover that the Dracolich was not alone. Attending him were 4 Kalak-Shun advisors mounted on Dracoliches that were once huge steel dragons, the slaughtered brood of Ikristus's hated rival, Crethmidion. So that's a whole bunch of deep lore from Chris Perkins' home game back in 2011. Pretty cool if you ask me. I really like the idea of the names of the 5 blasphemous undead creatures burned into the fingers of the character, and then he has to go and avenge or attack those enemies to fulfill his destiny to take his place by the Raven Queen's side. It's pretty cool. And I also like the idea that the Dracolich has his enemy dragons as kind of like minions or allies. All right, so back to Chris's words here. As soon as I speak the words previously in Iomandra, a hush falls over the gaming table. The off-topic conversations end abruptly, and the players become all ears. This happens every time without fail. And if you actually watch Chris Perkins DM, you'll see that he really does, in a certain way, command his table. And a lot of good DMs do this, and it's actually really kind of hard to do in real life with your friends. Sometimes they get out of hand, if you know what I mean. But having that kind of authority is very nice. Anyway, so he says, after speaking the words, I began stringing together my bullet points into a rough narrative. The whole recap usually takes about a minute. I don't worry about adding detail because I trust that the player's memories will begin filling in the gaps automatically. The recap simply sparks their memories and puts the players in the right frame of mind to start the session. Some DMs rely on their players to provide the recap, and having tried it as a DM and experienced it as a player, I think that's a mistake. Left to their own devices, players will often focus on the wrong details or get the facts wrong, or phrase the recap in a way that doesn't reinforce the atmosphere you're trying to evoke. The recap is the DM's best tool to get the session started on the right foot and to immerse players in the moment. Man, that's like some awesome advice. I don't even know what to add to that, but yeah. The recap focuses only on the details that are pertinent to the story at hand. Most of the bullet points in the example above tie to a specific player character, Allagon, a Revenant Ranger played by Andrew Finch. The Wednesday group has 8 players, each with their own character arc, but it's Allagon that's really driving this particular session. The recap gives the players a sense of what they can expect out of tonight's game. A big fat fight against 5 Dracoliches. For Allagon to achieve his epic destiny, a Christus must be destroyed. Simple as that. 8 players in your game, huh, Chris? That's a bit much, man. While this particular session focuses on combat and one character's arc, the adventure as a whole is a tangled weave of many different plots, including a story revolving around the party's Deva war priest discovering secrets from a past life, the search for a missing party member, and the theft of a mystical set of tomes that chronicle the rise and fall of a kingdom wiped from history by Vecna. That's a long sentence. These are no less important to the players than Allagon's quest to prove himself to the Raven Queen, and next week's recap will probably include bullet points reminding the players where things left off with these other facets of the campaign. One of the cool side benefits of this approach, if and when you decide to chronicle the events of your campaign, say in a wiki, you need only to refer to your binder or notebook filled with page after page of bullet points touching on the highlights. I've come to rely on my own recaps for just this reason. Yeah, that's actually a really good point because it will serve as a kind of diary for the campaign with dates and everything. That's actually really cool. Here we go. Here's some lessons learned from old Chris Perkins. Recaps kick off 99% of my gaming sessions. However, I can think of plenty of good reasons not to use recaps. The number one reason is to intentionally jar or disorient your players. I remember one session that began with the words, "Roll initiative." It worked well because the players weren't expecting the sudden springboard into combat. We had ended the previous session at the beginning of a climactic encounter. The players had the whole week to discuss tactics, and I could sense that they were jazzed to start rolling dice. The recap wasn't necessary, and frankly, I wanted to keep things moving at a breakneck pace. Like all good rituals, mastery comes with repetition. If the campaign recap is something you'd like to experiment with, keep in mind the following. Begin each session jotting down bullet points about what has gone before. The campaign recap sets the tone for the session. Present the campaign recap yourself and keep it short. Don't worry about covering all the bases. Hit the highlights and let the player's memories fill in the gaps. Until the next encounter. All right, that's actually really cool, talking about campaign recaps. If you made it this far into the video, all the way to the end, man, hit like, do the YouTube stuff, what have you. And hopefully I'll get to record this next one soon. The next one's going to be called, I Don't Know What It Means, but I Like It. So, that sounds interesting. Thanks for listening, guys. Have a good one.